Welcome to the pod focusing on the aftermath and recovery from the devastating Palisades fires of January 2025. Journalist Joel Pollack, entrepreneur Oren Ezra, and technology expert Ron Goldschmidt serve up to the moment vital news and information, discuss the ongoing recovery efforts, and introduce us to the individuals and trades who are playing key roles in rebuilding our cherished communities. We're diving into the deep end and learning quickly how we can move forward together. We know the pain because we're living real-time news, stories, resources, and insights on the ongoing recovery effort. Buckle up. We're three homeless guys.
Welcome to Three Homeless Guys, the podcast about the Palisades fire and the rebuilding effort. I'm journalist Joel Pollack here with technology expert Ron Goldschmidt and entrepreneur Oren Ezra, and we are very pleased this week to be joined by a special guest. His name is Adam Freed, and he is an entrepreneur who has launched a very interesting startup that is providing direct assistance to people who lost their homes or had smoke damage in the Palisades fire. So we're very pleased to welcome Adam. Adam, we'll give you a more full and complete introduction later, but first just want to say welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. It's awesome to be here.
All right, let's go around the horn with some news here. And I've got a little bit of news first from Washington, D.C. I should point out this is a very interesting edition of the podcast because Adam is in New York, in Brooklyn, and I'm here in DC in DuPont Circle, and Ron and Oren are in LA, various parts of LA. So this is, in a sense, the first bi-coastal episode where everybody is in some different major city, I think, except for, I guess, Ron and Oren being in the same place. But it does feel like the Palisades diaspora has started to spread, at least for now, until we all come back home. But anyway, it's just interesting. And being in DC, I've been approached by the Department of Housing and Urban Development to go to one of their housing fairs. They're having a showcase right now on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. that I'm going to check out. Hopefully I'll have some pictures or video from that on the next episode, but they want me to see some alternative construction methods and things that they're working on that they think could help people in the Palisades and beyond. So I'm going to check that out this week. And other news from Washington, it just came through earlier this week that Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin and Senator Rick Scott of Florida are launching an investigation into the Palisades fire in the Senate. They're going to have a Senate investigation, and they're going to try to figure out what caused the fire and why there was a very insufficient emergency response from state and local government. This came after Senator Scott visited the Palisades with Spencer Pratt, who we've spoken about on this show before. He's developing quite the following, and he brought Rick Scott to the Pacific Palisades to check out the damage and to see what happened. And Spencer, of course, lost his house and is very upset about it, and he is suing, and he's leading the charge to hold public officials accountable. And you don't have to agree 100% with everything he says. I often find that I disagree, but I like the thrust of what he's doing. He's definitely drawing attention to the Palisades and bringing now a congressional investigation, a Senate investigation. So we'll see where that goes. I've reached out to both of those Senate offices to see if there's more that we can do with them, maybe even grab an interview. But that's the big news. So we're going to see Congress get involved now. And Gavin Newsom, our governor, responded with a statement saying that he was proud of the greatest wildfire response in the history of the state and so forth. And Senator Scott said, well, okay, we look forward to your cooperation. So this could be a moment of cooperation, or could be another confrontation, one among many, between Gavin Newsom and Republicans in Washington. But it does seem that someone is finally stepping in on a federal level to find out what happened. So that is certainly interesting news. Let's go to, I forget who wanted to go first. Was it Ron? Or next,
sure,
I should say.
I'll go first. By the way, Joel, you talk about like the Palisades diaspora. So I get this like analytical report from like where our viewers are, our viewers, listeners are. And so like they're all over the world. Like we have folks in like Bahamas, Canada, Greece, New Zealand, Australia. And so I would think that they have some kind of local ties to this, or California politics, unless there are some very, very dark people out there. or pyromaniacs in Greece that are like really interested in the podcast, but there are like listeners all over the world, so the diaspora is quite spread out, and that's nice to see. But I'm really excited to have this episode because it's been long coming in terms of like having, we always talk about the technological innovations that we want to bring in to the situation, and not only just looking back, but looking forwards into like the rebuild. So it's a great pod that we have today. Glad to have Adam with us to talk through his product, but also in a larger scale about like the other things that we can learn from technology as we go forward. So Adam, welcome to the show. And maybe talk a little bit about your company and what it does and how you've come to be, and basically a journey over the last 7 months.
Great. Thanks so much. It's great to be here. Yeah, I mean, we were joking that, while we're talking, AI is getting smarter and it's learning, it's working. And so my background, I grew up in the Palisades, went to Pali High, and my parents' house, they lived in it for 49 years, burned to the ground right near the high school. And I just thought, I've spent my whole career in tech, and I got to build stuff. We've got to build stuff. So we built a bunch of stuff. We built an interactive map that Team Palisades is using. We built a bunch of tools, but one of them just took off. I mean, my friend Arvind and I built it in a very short space of time. And it's really basic. It's a way to log all your contents. So I know a lot of the listeners are dealing with what my family's dealing with, which is you have to make a list of everything you've ever owned. And it's brutal. It's brutal if you have your stuff, and if you lost all your stuff, it's a nightmare. So we built an AI-powered tool that allows you to very quickly build rooms. And you can upload old Thanksgiving photos, old holiday photos, and it'll ignore the people, it'll look behind them, and it'll count your silverware, and it will count the china plates on the table. It counts the table. So it's looking for all your personal property. And then what it does is it lists them, it adds a value that it finds from the internet, which you have to then go and edit to make sure it's appropriate to what you actually have. And people are able to build their entire inventory in a matter of hours instead of months. So people in the Palisades and Eaton fire areas have now uploaded 500,000 items, and the ticker just keeps going up. And we decided to quit our jobs and just work on this. It's the idea that you go through this nightmare, you lose everything. Either in the case of some of us, the whole house burns down, or I know in the case of you, Joel, like it's there, but what can you do with it? Then to have to be sort of re-traumatized, I guess, to go back and make that list in a spreadsheet just seemed crazy. So we've made it really easy to build your list really quickly. And I would just say that where we're taking it is, people are coming to us now and saying, hey, I'm logging all my stuff now because fire season is starting, right? Hurricane season on the East Coast is going to start. And so God forbid, like the fire comes my way, at least I'll have a full list, and I won't have to go back and forth and argue about the sofa and the how many magazines did I have and how old were the magazines and what's the depreciated value and all this nonsense.
So can you go a little bit into like how the technology works, like in terms of not, like just it takes a photo, you take a photo of the room, and then basically the items are logged?
Right. So you can we organize it room by room. You set up a room, let's call it living room. And the first thing we recommend doing is take a video or a photo of the room if you have it and upload it. The AI it processes everything. It looks for everything that counts as personal property. So the definition of that is if you turned your house upside down and shook it, everything that would fall out. So it's not counting your cabinets, it is counting your refrigerator and your lamps. And it creates an itemized value.
Why doesn't it count the cabinets, by the way?
What's that?
Why doesn't it count the cabinets?
Because that's part of your dwelling coverage.
That's interesting.
You're right. So category A is dwelling. So that's everything that's fixed to the house. And then category C is personal property. So you just want those lists to be separate. So what it does, it goes in the background, it processes everything, it assigns a value that it finds on the internet, and then it gives you the opportunity to say, what condition was this in? You can add more specificity. You can say, hey, that wasn't just a couch. It was a room and board Jasper 88-inch couch, and then you'll get a more specific value. And then you can also upload receipts. So if you have old receipts lying around, you can download your whole Amazon history and you can upload it in a CSV form. Any documentation you have, you can upload it, it will process it, it will list it. And then when your list is complete, you just hit export and it downloads it all into a perfectly organized spreadsheet. So a lot of times that's what the insurance companies want, is they want that very specific spreadsheet, and it'll download into that.
Can I ask you something just about the input before I get to the spreadsheet?
Yeah.
So anything you have about your house and the contents, video, document, postcards, Facebook photos, I mean, anything?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, everything. I mean, anything that's like, if you look behind me, I'm actually in Santa Monica today at my parents' rental apartment.
But you ruined my bi-coastal thing.
No, I'm still bi-coastal. I was in Brooklyn 3 days ago.
Okay.
But you'll see, it would just go back and it would find every single thing sitting on the shelf. But it's only going to say, hey, that's a camera lens. And then you'll want to go in and say, yeah, that's specifically which camera lens is that, and get that level of specificity.
I have a neighbor who had some kind of a hunch before he left his house and walked around the house and took a video of the inside of his house. And your AI tool could basically extract information from that?
Yep, that's right. Just upload it. I would say videos over 5 minutes, sometimes our AI provider, which we use mostly Google Gemini, it will hang sometimes on the long videos, but you can just break it down into shorter videos, and theoretically it can do a video of any length. But I do videos all the time. So after the fire, once we built this tool, I was like, listen, I got to take a video of everything, right? So I just go through my house. I do it 2-3 minutes at a time. I take a video of like this room I'm in. I would just walk through, take a slow video. I open every drawer and point the video into the drawer, and then you'll get an itemization. And listen, the length of your list is everything. You cannot lie in these things, that's fraud. You cannot commit fraud. But if you're trying to build your list, what matters is all the little stuff. I mean, think about it. How often do you buy a sofa? Like once every 5 years, 10 years? But how often did you buy a new book, a stapler, canned food, a cordless phone? Like that stuff all adds up. And what we've learned is the way insurance companies mostly give you your contents itemization is based on a percentage of the value of your dwelling. Roughly, they'll say, hey, your dwelling is worth $1 million. You should be insured for $700,000, $600,000 for your contents. I'm just making that up, but that's about the numbers they'll use. Well, what is that? So first of all, it's better if you have your own list so you can get your coverage rated correctly for what you actually own. But secondly, like if the coverage limit, it's a coverage limit of 700,000. You might have 1.4 million worth of content. You might have 200,000 worth of content. So whatever you have as your actual contents, you want to list as much of that as you can so that you can actually get as close to the number as you can.
So it's, just to give people the address again, it's bevelmade.com, bevelmade.com. And I have one more question before I throw it back to Ron, just about the output. The spreadsheet, we had a problem with State Farm when we were itemizing all the smoke damaged items in our house, where we spent weeks on this spreadsheet, and then they came back to us and said, oh, it's the wrong format. Here's our format. And we tried using AI to port over the data from one spreadsheet to another, and State Farm's spreadsheet was locked. So they did not let us do it. And I don't know how you get around that problem. If you ask your insurance company for their spreadsheet format first and then apply your AI tool, I mean, can it work that way?
So a couple things. First of all, I've gotten to know the folks at United Policyholders really well. I don't know if you follow them. They're fantastic. It's a nonprofit insurance advocacy group. Yeah,
we had one of their former leaders on our podcast a few months ago.
Fantastic, Valerie, right? So they did some really helpful work and have helped us understand that. I think it's section 106 point something of the California Insurance Code says the insurance company has to accept the information in the format you provide. So you shouldn't have to format specifically for them, but we do have formatting that we think is appropriate to most carriers. And then if we find out there's an example, like if State Farm had a specific way that they wanted to do it and we could reduce friction, we could try to figure out to do that. It doesn't do that now, but if that were something that were really helpful to help people port from one format to another, that's not hard for us to do.
Wait, so they have to accept it in the format you send it to them in?
So I'm not an insurance expert, like I'm a tech dude, but my understanding is, I think it's we can look it up later. I think it's section 106 or something of the insurance code.
Now I'm really angry because they cost us weeks going back into their format, but okay.
Yeah, I mean, they can ask for, I think, the substantially similar information, right? So they certainly can say, listen, we need the following information. But my understanding is they're not supposed to give you a hard time about format. But again, like that's a perfect thing for one of the United policyholders people.
Yeah, and I think that's not only applies to itemization of contents, but it also applies to now folks submitting bids for reconstruction. So,
yeah,
the insurance company may ask for a certain kind of file, and it's extremely detailed on the reconstruction side, but yet your contractor doesn't have access to that system or wants to provide a different file or Excel or some different format. They have to accept the format in which it is provided. Now, they can ask for questions around, we need more information about it, but they can't ask for a different format or for a format to be reformatted just so they can accept it. And so I think it applies to a lot of different parts of the policies. But I do have a question, Adam, around.
Can I say one thing about that real quick, Ron, before your question? So we actually, I think I told you we built a bunch of tools, and another tool we built is a bid leveler. So we saw this problem, and this tool is not live, but if people want it, you can just email me at info@bevelmade.com, and we can try to make it available. But we built a bid leveler because when you get contractor bids, to your point, you're going to get some that come from your insurance company, which are usually called an Xactimate format, and it's very specific. And then your local contractor who you may want to work with or you want to get a bid from probably has their own format that they've used for 20 years and they like it. And how the heck are you supposed to compare these? I mean, it's just completely apples to oranges to pears. So we built a bid leveler that if you upload your architectural plans, it'll scan it, and then we'll kind of come up with a proto bid, like the baseline, what expectation, and then we can run both of those against it, and it'll diff them. It'll show you where the differences are.
Is that only for rebuilding, or is that for repair and anything?
It's mostly designed for building. It doesn't have to be rebuilt, but for building. But we were going to release it, but we're just a couple of us, and we have so many people using the insurance tool now that we were just like, we can't support it all at the same time. But
it's not just Palisades people; it's North Carolina flood people, and
we don't officially ask. We're just going to start asking people to voluntarily tell us where they are. Our view was, this is a tool for you. We're not. We're not going to ask too many questions. We're going to start to see if people will voluntarily tell us more. We think it's probably 75% Palisades, probably 20% Eaton, and probably 5% other. That's my guess, but I'm not sure.
But you could scale it up to anything. I mean, you could basically say, you could even sell it to insurance companies. I'm not telling you to do that, but you could say, here's how you get to an estimate of what your coverage ought to be on this house. Go into a house that hasn't had a disaster, and here's how you itemize everything.
So one of the insurance companies came to us. We're under NDA, so I'm not sure what. I think it's one of the ones that has been paying their claims. Let me just say that it's not one. It's one of the ones that's been on the good side of stuff.
That narrows it down a lot, by the way.
Yeah. But they really are great, and they are interested in working with us. We've been meeting with them, and they want this process to go away too. The process is not. Nobody's winning in this process. Nobody's winning. The insurance companies are spending a fortune to drive things in really circular ways, and customers feel terrible. We'd like to fix the whole system, and we think one of the ways that you do that is exactly that, is if everybody walked into their insurance office or their broker's office with an itemization and said, listen, here's what I've got. Like, let's write a policy based on what I've actually got. We think that solves huge problems.
But by the way, they're definitely winning, the insurance companies. The reason why they're not paying is, as we talked about in previous episodes, they want to keep the money in their pockets, even if they know that they will need to pay in a year. Just the interest they're making on our money sitting in their bank accounts for the next year is a lot of money. And that's why I think more and more people are looking at the delay of the insurance companies and what are we able to hold them like in charge of things like, I'm not able to go back to my house in 2 years. That's what my coverage for rental is. So are they going to pay me for another 6 months or 8 months or whatever it is because their delay, I wasn't able to get back into my house. So I do think that they making a lot of money out of it. But let me ask you a question, Adam. For instance, I sat down, I made a crazy list. Me, my son, my wife sat down for like over a month, every day, couple of hours, try to memorize, put everything on. Until today, we still remember things that we had that we didn't put in the list. I can give you an example now. The insurance company came back to me and said, hey, you wrote down you had like, I don't know, 20, 30 shirts worth $1,000. Now, please break it down for us. Stuff like this that I'm sure that after, and Ron went through this as well. After he broke it down, they find another thing. After they find another thing, they find another thing. Did you guys look at the legality of things and how detailed they can ask us to make the list?
I don't know the answer to that, but I know that specificity is always helpful, right? I mean, you don't want to be able to say we had 30 shirts. And then what they have to do is they have to give a condition report for each of those shirts, right? So they'll just say, oh, 30 shirts, they're probably all average condition. So I'm going to depreciate them based on that average condition. But that might not be true. You're like, no, 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 no. If I look at the shirts, 3 of them were like super fancy and they were brand new, and 5 of them were totally holy, and their value is my wife has been asking me to throw that thing out forever. So, like you kind of want to find the specificity, because that's what actually matters. So that's the beauty of using photos or even just manually listing it, if you can, is that it's going to be specific to the actual item.
Have you been finding that now that most folks have probably submitted their initial lists at this point, does the tool help with that battle of the depreciation battle, for example, where the company will say, hey, the shirt was 10 years old and therefore we're going to depreciate it 50%. Is the tool able to help essentially like the customer fight it out with the insurance in terms of the depreciation scale of things?
We don't, I mean, every company is using a different depreciation scale as best we understand it, and we can't solve for the way they handle depreciation. I mean, I think what you want to understand is before you make your list or while you're making your list, try to understand what your insurance company's policy is. So some policies, for instance, say it's full replacement value, and that's what they're going to calculate. Some policies say this is only actual cash value. So that's a whole depreciation situation, right? And then some will say it's actual cash value until you prove replacement, and then we'll pay you the remainder. So we haven't built that logic in because it's very specific to each insurance company. But if one of the insurance companies wants to talk to us and tell us how they would like to see the tool built so that it makes it easier for everybody to get this thing done, we'd be happy to do that. I mean, it would be great.
It could even be specific to the adjuster, because some people with insurance policies at the same company have been told different things.
That's right.
We're going to pay you for your loss. We're going to pay you X percentage depreciation, or we're only going to pay you once you go out and buy the thing that you're claiming compensation for. And it's very confusing. There seems to be no consistency. It's almost like you get what you negotiate for, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of third parties that are involved here. It seems like we've noticed there's pretty different behavior if you lost everything or if your house is still standing. So it seems like if your house is still standing, there's a lot of negotiation. There's a lot of third party vendors, the remediator and the contents, person who comes to log the contents and bags them or whatever else. So each one of those may operate off of an independent set of policies, and it's very uneven as we're understanding it as to like who's getting good communication, who's getting terrible communication. And
yeah, I'm happy, by the way, if you want any insight into that process. I mean, it sounds to me like the value of what you're providing, if I can just tell you rough ballpark estimates based on what we had to spend to hire a contractor, not just to clean the contents from our house, which had smoke damage inside, but luckily everything inside was still intact. we had to pay, let's just say in the order of tens of thousands of dollars for a contractor who
Easily.
would document and use their AI tools to create a spreadsheet based on the things they were photographing. They photographed item by item. And what you're doing is basically saving that expense. I mean, you could save people $20,000, $30,000 that they'd have to pay a contractor to do the same thing, starting out with an AI generated list that you could then edit, I guess, as you went through. But it's I mean, if you want to quantify the cost savings, I have to ask you eventually, once we get over describing what you do and what your product does, I have to ask you about the revenue model, how you guys make money, where you are in terms of company development, investment. Do you have Series A? You know, what's happening in terms of the timeline of your company's development. But maybe we can get to that after we've gone through the whole
Sure.
story.
But so back to what you were saying about the contents. Yeah, I mean, what I'm hearing is that third-party vendors come in. Sometimes you hire them. Sometimes your carrier hires them. And then their list is something that people are debating. So first you're debating with this third party. Like, it's not just, dolls and toys. It's like much more specific. These ones are valuable, these ones are not. So there's a lot of debating about what the item is and what its progeny is and what it should be worth. And then that then goes to the carrier, and then there's another debate. So we just want to compress those cycles, right? We just want you to be able to get that first list fast and be able to make it accurate and easy. And one thing that's important, by the way, is, when you're in spreadsheets, like, it's very hard to figure out, like, did I log that? Where did I log it? Where did I put it? Is it, because you have thousands of items in a spreadsheet that you're supposed to personally understand how to track. So because we're broken out by room, and it's really easy to drag things from room to room. You move them around. You can look for duplicates pretty easily. You can upload receipts. The receipt may generate some duplicates in the room. Click those out, get rid of them. It takes you from creator to just editor, and that's a lot easier. Editor is a lot easier for this kind of thing than create is. And then the other thing that we're seeing is that, because there may be multiple rounds of going back and forth with your carrier, you can download the spreadsheet, send the spreadsheet to your carrier, your insurance company, and if they give you comments back, you just go back into the tool, you update everything in Bevel made, and then you just download a fresh one. So you never have to edit in the spreadsheet. You're always editing in this pretty soft, warm feeling, friendly, kind of dynamic user interface. It's just a lot easier.
Great.
Just to jump in there, Ron, I wanted to make the observation that you and I have spoken about this on frequent episodes, but what he's talking about is that back and forth about what an item is and what the value is. I mean, that's what you've had to deal with, right? What brand label was on the jacket that your wife lost, and
Totally.
just endless.
Totally. And by the way, the other tool that you're working on, Adam, it's something that I'm dealing with right now, which is a submitted bid from a contractor. They're asking for a different format, and which they know that the contractor won't have, but they're asking for it anyway. So now there's this back and forth going on about that. So lots of opportunities. Obviously, AI is blowing this thing right open.
Amazing.
With all the level of ingenuity that has come online. Some of it's coming online rapidly every week. Let me open the lens just a little bit about rather than talk about Bevel Made, which I'm very happy to talk about, and we're here to talk about that as well. But what do you see from your side of things on how technology can be used within the wider lens of how to bring about a faster recovery? And I'm not talking about just a rebuild and AI fire prevention tools. I'm talking from a technology perspective, and it's something that we brought up on the pod for many, many, many times, which is there's so many great tools, and yet the government, insurance companies seem very reluctant to adopt them. So what have you seen from your side of things in terms of the tools that can be brought to this to make it a faster, better, speedier, more cost-efficient recovery?
Yeah, man, do I wish I had a great answer for that, because it does feel like it's just ridiculously slow and frustrating. But I mean, I would think that, listen, if you think about the Palisades, there's got to be a logistics plan. How are we going to get that many trucks in and out? Where are the trucks going to park? And I know different people are working on different things, but it feels like with some really smart application of technology and everybody working together just a little bit more, we should be able to build models really quickly to figure out how to do this. I mean, It's crazy how smart AI is. I mean, we could probably type this into like one of the models right now and just say like, "Hey, here's what happened. What should we do?" And it'll kick the butt out of this podcast because it'll just be like, "Oh, here's all the things you should do." And it won't all be perfect, but it's a great starting point. So I think logistics is a place that I would love to see more application of AI because these big, hairy, complicated problems with a lot of variables, that's what it's great at, right?
You know, it's funny you're speaking about logistics. There's so many cool AI tools, and we're going to actually put them in the show notes. Not only the stuff for Bevel and where you folks can find you, but also some of the tools that we've encountered. One of those things, I don't know, Oren, if you have the video queued up, I just saw this morning, and I think it's so cool. I wanted to share it with you guys. It's not necessarily anything to do with like specific fire prevention, but it's a bot that basically paints or prints where everything should be made on a job site. It's one of those things that is like really cool to see, and I think it's going to bring up a lot of efficiency on job sites, and that's something that I work with a lot. Oren, can you bring it up? There we go. So what this thing does is it goes and it prints on the slab everything where everything should be. So instead of going off a plan, it actually prints exactly on the slab where all the items are going to basically cut down the amount of errors, make everything like perfectly appear as it is on slab, and this prints it off a plan onto the floor plan itself.
That's huge because like we've done some research on this. One of my other co-founders, a third co-founder, he's an architect and builder, and we started out with an idea to build construction tools. We've just ended up in the insurance world because of the fire. But I mean, the amount of rework cost from those errors, like if any of these things that what you're showing, if you drop that slab, or you put a joist in or whatever, like an inch off, you can throw everything off. So like the cost of rework in construction is huge. And when we have 6,800 homes or something have to be rebuilt, is that right? If we could do anything we could do to help bring precision and clarity to that process. I mean, precision and clarity on budgeting, but precision and clarity in the construction, right? I mean, nobody rebuilding off of insurance funds has extra. It's so tight. And I was saying to one of my friends, like the only thing worse than only half the houses in your neighborhood getting built back is half the houses in your neighborhood getting built back halfway, and then people running out of money.
Yeah.
You really want people to be able to get their real clarity on budget, real clarity on scope, and then real precision in the build.
Yeah,
By
but
the way, I don't know if you've talked about scope, but scope's super important, right? So when you get a contractor bid back, it's not the price you should look at first. What you actually want to figure out is what's included in that price. Because where people get themselves in trouble is there's huge sections of scope missing from the bid that you get back. So you're like, oh, this to this, price seems good, price seems good, price seems good. But what you're not realizing is they forgot, to include the cost of construction cleanup or, hauling the dirt or demo on something or, whatever. Like they only calculated using a low grade PVC pipe and you need a higher grade pipe. So that's where people get crushed is on specificity and scope.
Or getting like a quote for like, price per square foot, which can mean anything. You can quote, per foot, but what does that entail and what does it mean? What kind of finishes do you have? And so you can have a huge array of price per square foot, depending on what's included in that bid in terms of scope of finishes.
Yeah.
And
then people, by the way, Ron, they forget that price per square foot does not include your architect. It does not include your permits. It does not include the expediters. It does not include a lot of the debris removal. It does not. So people get a price per square foot and they do the calculation and they think, okay, I'm going to build back for, 1.x. And they're just wrong by 30, 40, 50% sometimes.
Adam, let me ask you something just about the rework costs that you mentioned, because my parents once did a remodel in their kitchen and whatever contractor they hired measured incorrectly. And so the new portion they were building didn't reach the wall of the old portion. So there was like a gap. Who bears the cost there? Is that the homeowner or does the contractor have to
I
basically
mean,
take the
like
loss.
all things, it kind of depends who you're dealing with, right? I mean, there are contractors. So my husband and I have done 3 remodels, got remodels of. That's how we thought we would build construction tools because I was like, there's got to be technology that helps in this horrible process of building and
That's
rebuilding.
literally what inspired you to get into this
That
business.
was the start. I mean, for my co-founders, Arvin Hale and I, we were all like, we've got to solve that problem. And then because of the fires, now we're trying to solve an insurance related problem. But that rework is really tough. And if you have a contractor who is still focused on it and motivated, you'll get it fixed quickly. And if you don't, good luck. You can argue with each other for the rest of time on Earth.
Yeah,
There's
you
just
really can.
no super easy answer with contractors. Which is, by the way, we made a little list, and I can pull it up of the things to get right on a contracting job. So I can tell you the 5 things that you want to pay attention to. Scope. You want to get your scope right in the start. And we actually call it basically the bid and award process. So make sure that you get specificity of what you want out to the contractor. That bid coming back is only as good as what you gave them. So that's really important. And then pick a contractor who you feel comfortable with and just know that something's going to go wrong and try to stress test. Like, is this someone I want to deal with when everything's going sideways? Or is this someone who's going to be really difficult in that moment? So, get your scope, quality, price, and then relationship. And then the next thing you want to get right is the contract. You got to get that contract to actually memorialize correctly what you're doing. People forget to read the contract. And huge things can get left out. Huge indemnification clauses that should be in there get left out. So don't cheap out. Like get a lawyer to review your construction contract. And then I think once you're into the building process, you got to show up on site, or make sure someone goes and shows up on site, because humans are humans. And then you got to close it out clean. One more thing that's really important: whatever you agree to on your payment schedule with your contractor, it's super super important. So never overpay early. So they'll be like, oh, I'm pretty close to done with this. Like if they're not, say like, let's get done and then we'll pay that milestone. But also don't drag it out with them, because if you drag it out with them, they've got to put their teams on another job. So, it's really important to make sure that you understand your payment schedules, you have a good relationship with that contractor, and you're really clear about what you're paying for when you're paying.
Another issue that I think will be facing all of us is like, even if I get a bid from a contractor, right? And they're starting to build a house, let's say in a year from today, the cost of materials is going to be totally different. So if he quoted me, let's say $600 a square foot, suddenly the whatever he needs to buy on this stage have doubled because of whatever it is, because of tariffs, because it's hard to get into the neighborhood, because it's you cannot find like a contract because of something. It's not up to him. So this is like a very big risk, and I think this is like a lot of people are saying like for the contractor, it's probably better to give you a cost plus quote. There are a few companies that I've seen that are trying to like when they give you the quote, trying to give you like more or less all their cost inside. They're trying to buy everything upfront, but then it means that you need to pay a lot more upfront. But then at least you secured your costing. So there is like some sort of like advantages and disadvantages to every side. But we're heading into a very complicated rebuild, and I think that honestly, like best rebuilds will be done off premises, either things like prefab that we've seen like a lot of development on prefabs, or panelized homes or things like this. I think will be easier to calculate your real cost of the house, and to decrease the amount of time that people need to be on premises and go in and out from the neighborhood. So I'm looking forward to see more and more development. We did look at like few companies, by the way. The problem is that their prices are very high. I think that like for companies that can do modular homes or a panelized home, I think their prices are very high. So that's
Yeah,
where I'm looking to see development.
yeah, I'm really hopeful that goes well. That there are some panelized builds and some prefab builds that go well, because I do think that not having to have all the labor force in one place but have it distributed is a great idea. Really important if you're doing a panelized prefab house, that you actually understand all the stuff that's not included in that contract too. So, clearing your ground, you probably still need a local general contractor. Maybe you get that through the company, but there's a lot of stuff that happens before, during, and after that build, even in a prefab situation, that you still need to get a full budget on up front. Because again, those square footage numbers are really tempting, but really dangerous.
Not only this, there is a lot of risk because you're going into a company that's probably getting like 100 or 200 houses and you putting your money over there. And a company like this, if they, I don't know, like didn't manage their financial right, suddenly they can go bankrupt and you don't have anything, basically. Because the house is being built over there on their in the facility. It's not that like a contractor, you paid him until a certain point, he went bankrupt. Okay, another contractor will come and continue from the point he left. Over there, you didn't get anything until it's there. It's not until it's not there. It's not there. So
Right. It
that's
concentrates the risk. Yeah.
yeah, that's the risk over there.
Adam, have you had a lot of interaction with like regulatory slash? I know you've talked to a couple of insurance companies, but in terms of the government, local authorities, has there been any dialogue in terms of like implementing the tool at that level? Because the biggest problem that I see is like everybody's talking a different language, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's like about itemization or whether it's about construction bids or whether it's about the rebuild or whether it's about zoning, everybody's talking a different language, and this is like an equalizer in terms of like, let's talk around this platform that is going to provide bids, and this is like one segment of it. But have you had any discussion about like bringing it in on a larger scale from a community or a government perspective?
We haven't. I mean, we've just sort of taken the approach, which is we're kind of living on the sort of fire survivor side, right? Like all of us. And just looking at my parents who were building their contents inventory on yellow legal tablets, and we thought there's got to be a less painful way to do this. Each problem that we've seen, we're happy to go after it, but we have not taken a system level approach. We've taken a very like individual human with an individual problem approach and kind of built up from there. I will say that we're pretty excited about where we think the possibilities lie to make this whole insurance situation better. And if there's anyone who's listening who's at an insurance carrier and wants to talk to us, we would love to understand if we could help you write policies based on actual contents lists and help people build those lists fast and easily. Would that help you? Your claims, it gets easier on the claim side, but it's also like you get correct amounts of insurance. You're not over or under insured. That's where that's the problem we'd most love to solve right now. And then the other piece of it is we just hope that if you're listening and you're in a house that's still standing and you have all your stuff, just itemize it now. It's free. We don't charge for any of this. Itemize it. We hope that over time we'll be able to build some industrial scale stuff that we'll monetize, but we don't want to monetize off of people like us.
I really wish I'd had this product before we actually had to go through and do all the cleaning and everything. I mean, it would have been very helpful. I did see messages floating about on some of the community WhatsApps, and I figured it was for people who had lost everything. I didn't know you could do it for people who had smoke damage and still had things.
Well,
let me ask you.
It was mostly you were right, and we've been adding those tools now. So we've been interviewing people with smoke damage, and it is you need videos and photos way more than you need straight up lists and memory prompts and things like that. So it is different, and we're now building for you now. So I'm sorry we didn't have it before, but we all started at January 7th was the start clock for all.
It's okay. Next disaster we'll be ready. Next time.
I mean, fire season's not going to get less fiery, I fear.
That presumes we can actually get insurance again. But okay, that's another subject. So, Adam, let me ask you this. You mentioned that this is free for people in the Palisades to use, which, first of all, thank you very much. Secondly, how are you going to make money? I mean, this is obviously extremely valuable. As I said, if you could quantify it, I would just compare a ballpark figure to what we had to spend in my case to get the contractor to go through, clean, remove, document, organize, get all the data. That was, on the scale of, let's say, tens of thousands of dollars. You're saving that money for the homeowner and for the insurance company. So that's a value you're providing for free. How are you making money?
Well, we're not making any money right now. It's all self-funded, and we're working. Part of the reason we're wanting to work with insurance company. I mean, this just started as like, this is my hometown. It just burned down. We're going to just do stuff. And now the question is, how do we keep scaling it And we really think there's an opportunity in working with insurance brokers as well as insurance carriers to change the way they underwrite as well as process claims, and that we should be able, we could charge for that. And we actually think that we can probably even help with some loss prevention. So for instance, if you take a video of your apartment or your house and we can identify some risks, we can tell you, hey, go clean your chimney out. Like that's a fire risk. Or hey, your furnace looks like it's got oily rags near it. Move them. If we give you that and your insurance company knows that you've got that analysis and you're keeping it clean that way, that should reduce. I mean, the best insurance claim is the one you never file, right? So really what we want to be able to do is help you get information that is accurate and helpful for you in your lives. And we think that if we can demonstrate that we can lower cost on claim, that we can improve underwriting, and that we can reduce loss, then we think insurance companies and brokerages are, we hope, motivated to want to buy the tool in a more industrial scale.
You know, I'm hearing about that being part of insurance policies in some of the new insurance startups that are coming online. I've got a friend who works for one, and they required their clients to put these sensors into their house that sense leaks in the pipeline. Because apparently the number one claim that most insurance companies get from homeowners is about flooding and leakage. And the leak detectors basically are loss prevention strategies. And sure enough, another friend who had used this company got a warning from one of their leak detectors that they had a leak under the kitchen sink. And they got a plumber in and probably saved everybody tens of thousands of dollars, but also the time, the smell, the mold, whatever else.
Yeah. So my insurance company had sent me a leak detector, required me to install a flow monitor for the water shutoff for the whole house. Excuse me, and a electrical sensor that I plug in that determines if there's surges, power surges, so that, I mean, that's going to reduce the risk of electrical fire. It's going to reduce them. So the real goal, I think, probably for all of us having lived through this is like, I don't want anybody else to live through another nightmare. Right. So the more we can push toward loss prevention, the better.
So let me ask one more question before I throw it back to the other guys. Where are you in terms of funding? Because most startups, I mean, you can't self-fund forever.
Not forever. No.
You probably have some angel investors. Are you into any kind of selling equity to investors yet?
We're just sitting down to have that conversation. 3 weeks ago, we sat down and said, there's so much energy around the tools we've been building in insurance. Let's focus entirely on that. That's where the need is most right now. And all the stuff that we've been building around construction, we're going to just park it. And the time may come where that's needed too. And when the time's ready, we'll pull those back out. But yeah, we will probably do a fundraise. We're going to talk to I was in venture capital. So I have some VCs that I've talked to, and we will probably do some fundraising. Just also because the number of support requests we're getting, managing the WhatsApp channel, like we support people who are especially disaster survivors. Like basically you text us at any hour, we are on it. And a lot of times, here's a great example of like where some of the time goes. A guy called in and he wrote into us and it said, data loss, data loss, data loss, all exclamation marks, right? We were like, there's no data loss, but like you're traumatized, like you've just lived through this nightmare. So we got on a phone and, he was logged out. He just needed to log back in. But there's a lot of time, that goes to like, hey, it's okay. Like, it's okay.
It's like that Far Side cartoon from like 20 or 30 years ago where like the guy's smashing the computer and it's unplugged.
Yeah.
Of course, now computers can run unplugged for a long time.
And listen, we have people we're supporting that. I mean, I think there's community that's forming around this tool. Like people are coming on and they're having little get-togethers and saying like, let's build our contents list together and have a glass of wine. There's all these little nuggets of sweetness there. But
it's so cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. I just like, before we part ways, I just wanted to ask you just like a kind of, again, a larger lens question with your experience in VC and like what's happening in the AI space. Where do you see like the biggest, kind of like returns that we can have on technology in the next 5 years? Again, going into it, it's kind of like a blank slate, like really is how government should be looking at it. And it's an opportunity to like make a really bad situation a better situation, because we have such a sheer volume of rebuild and, whole like infrastructure to rebuild, not just in Palisades, but in Malibu, like the whole, basically the
Altadena.
Everything, exactly. So from that perspective, where do you see like the biggest return on capital and like what return on innovation coming in the next few years?
I mean, I'm going to answer a slightly different question, which is I think that the thing that we have to accept is, you know, there's a disconnect. We've lost everything. And so my appetite for risk around trying new technologies or whatever else is very high. First of all, I've been in tech. Secondly, like my parents' house burned down. There's like nothing left. There's not a teacup. So am I willing to try stuff? Yeah. Why not? Right? I think the problem is that sometimes government or large organizations or whatever, like they have a very low risk, low threshold for risk, the low appetite for risk. That's where I'd like to see us get the mismatch sort of shaken out and just say, listen, like our town burned down. We should be able to have the best town ever when it comes back. Right? I mean, we're starting at zero. We have no infrastructure. We have no houses. We should be building the
Totally.
best thing ever, but we're going to have to embrace some risk to do that and say like, why don't we have great traffic sensors going for everyone going in and out of the Palisades to understand who's going in and out and how to manage the truck flow? That was a great application of technology. Why don't we have, there's so many places you could apply tech, but we just have to say like, are we willing to embrace the risk? Because some stuff will go wrong, right? It's new.
That's my biggest issue with what I see so far, which is like things are being done the same way. So, the permitting, the zoning, they're not asking for new things. It's just being done the same way that it was done in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. There's nothing new coming on. And that's what I really want to shake people up and say, like, we really need all of these tools. Like, let's make things like your tool, like other things, just part of the rebuild.
I mean, how can we say, how could we even say, Ron, how can we even say to people, whether that's the electeds or whatever else, listen, as a community, we will try to speak with a voice and say, like, we are willing to try new things. I mean, we probably don't all have perfect alignment in the community, right? It's thousands and thousands of people. But if a bunch of us could say, like we want to try some new things, like, try some new things with us. Don't guinea pig us, but like, let's partner together and really try to be innovative. But how do we get the incentives to align? How do we get that person who's working in government who's getting pummeled all the time and like it's a hard job and the reward's not so great. So how can we say to them, listen, we're grateful for what you're doing and what you can do, and we want to encourage you to do more with us. Right. And I don't know how to build that bridge.
Yeah, we're going to keep on trying. And ultimately, like, if we do things the same way, we're going to also get the same results, right? Like, if we don't change anything in the way that we're rebuilding, there's going to be nothing that prevents this next fire from happening. We might get lucky. It might happen in 40 years, but it's going to happen again unless we do things a different way.
You're talking about new methods. There's a community event that I should have mentioned at the start by Team Palisades sometime this week, where they're basically bringing people together to discuss fire-wise building ideas. I mean, all these conversations are going on. But Ron, I actually wanted to ask you something. I mean, isn't this in your wheelhouse? I mean, this is new technology for construction. I mean, are you seeing things like this in your industry? And how does this fit into the big picture?
We're seeing tons of things on the construction side. And we're going to post on the show notes things even for fire prevention that are coming online. In terms of construction itself, this is like almost like a very unique confluence of events. Because what happens is, like, this is part of the problem. Like, when the insurance companies gave us like our rebuild, costs, for example, they're going off of models that are showing them like it's going to cost $300 to $350 a foot to rebuild, because that's what Exastimate spit out, because that's what it costs in Plano, Texas, or in Woodland Hills. But we have such a unique situation where like all those costs are completely out of the water, and so. In a world where we have to rebuild the old way, most people, as Adam very astutely pointed out, are just not going to have the insurance money to do it. So you need to have the incentives in order for the technology to come forward. So why do the modular, for example, concepts haven't really been applied here? Because modular would work in our case. We have a huge community that's been affected without access to the construction on site. We don't have labor on site. It's going to be extremely expensive to build. The modular companies are able to do that. However, they're still not able to do economies of scale to the level where it's going to be much cheaper than traditional building. And so we're left with this like very specific issue, what I think is going to require a very specific solution for our specific situation, because of the confluence of events really hasn't happened on this scale in such a small, geographically isolated place with so much money involved before. So I think we're still going to have to keep on digging. And like, yes, there are point solutions, things like we talked about with earlier on the show and the point solution. But I still think on a larger scale, we're going to need something to rethink this thing very differently into like how we rebuild as a community. And I think it starts with the small tools and ends up all the way at the top in terms of like, how do we reconstruct, 10,000 homes in a couple of years in the most efficient way? And I don't think anybody's faced that really at this scale before.
I think that's right. And I think, I think momentum builds momentum and inertia sort of drives inertia. And I think the more we're able to just say like, hey, our community has so much talent in it, right? So, hey, we've got a tool that makes it easier to like knock out your contents policy. Now we're going to build a tool that does it, makes it easier to level your bids. And someone else is going to make a tool that monitors traffic effectively. And someone else I think if we can just start building momentum with these, it's hard to stop something once it has momentum, right? And it's also safer for people to get on board when something already has momentum. So how can we de-risk it? How can we de-risk trying new things for electeds and other folks so that they understand like, yeah, we've got some momentum here. All we have to do is like drive more energy into it.
Well, Adam, this is amazing. I mean, I've found this one of the most fascinating discussions we've had. And, Oren often complains that we have a lot of people on the show who have good intentions, but nobody's actually come along with something that would help him. So, Oren, did Adam pass the test?
100% good.
Come on, what's he going to say? I'm here. Like,
You don't know if he's going to find something to complain about at the end of the show.
Adam, your computer program doesn't physically clear debris. At least not yet.
Not yet.
All right. Well, listen, this has been amazing. It's bevelmade.com. Bevel, V as in Victor, made, MADE.com. And I'm looking forward to using it, Adam, because I'm going to start uploading some contractor bids. I've got contractors who use different programs. Exactly what you're talking about. The contractor bids,
you got to email me because that's not publicly live.
That's not live yet?
Okay. Email me at info@bevelmade.com and we'll figure out a way to make that available. But if
it's awesome because...
But yeah, listen, hurricane season is coming for DC. So like use the tool to like log all your possessions in DC, right?
I'm living in a furnished premises here. So these are not my possessions except for the flag and the books. Basically, this is it. One of the consequences of having ALE with an insurance company, but having no cash yet, at least, to buy new furniture is that you get the insurance company to get the furnished place rather than the one you have to spend money on. So I'm happy to help the owner of this place, but we're all still kind of nomadic here. There's nothing permanent. But anyway, thanks so much for joining us, Adam. This has been just fantastic, and you can find us at you can find us at 3homelessguys.com. Also email us at pod@3homelessguys.com. For Oren, Ron, and Adam, this has been 3 Homeless Guys. I'm Joel Pollack, and until next time, stay strong.
Thanks for listening to 3 Homeless Guys. If this episode hit home, please subscribe to our channel. Check out 3homelessguys.com for RSS feeds to your favorite streaming service. Follow us on social and share this with a friend who needs to hear it. Drop us a review or shoot us a message at pod@3homelessguys.com. We'd love to hear from you. Stay strong, and we'll catch you next time.